Hey there, and welcome back to Verbose DevOps. I hope you're having a great day. I wanted to do a semi-live exercise with you about testing an API with Python. I say semi-live because I've already done this just a few minutes ago, but I decided to re-record the video so that it's a bit smoother without interruptions, etc. It makes for a shorter video with the only clear points that you need to know. So what is our requirement here? Testing an API using Python. I thought this would be typical DevOps use case. Either creating or using APIs is very common. Testing is common. Python is one of the most common tools, along with Bash and Golang even lately these days. So in our case, what we're going to do is we're going to test a public API. It just saves me having to bring up a private one or create a private one. We'll use a public one that's free, and preferably one that doesn't have a key, so we don't have to worry about authentication. We just want to start off with the basics. We can always iterate and improve later something that can handle authentication. So we're going to use well-known libraries. I happen to know a couple of these are quite well known. Don't like to use obscure libraries. In general, I believe in keeping things simple, using tools that are commonplace. That'll better help you over your career when you move to other companies as well. So I know that request is commonly used to interact with REST APIs from Python, and I also know that pytest is a very common testing framework. There are other ones, there are several in fact, but for our simple purposes, I know that pytest, apparently from what I've read about it, works very well, is going to do the job, so there's no need to use anything advanced. We are going to eventually have a number of test cases, so you'll see these are basically testing for different scenarios. And also finally, we're going to heavily use AI. Now, I don't recommend only using AI when you code. You can end up over relying on it, and you'll really never develop good muscle memory, the ability to code in an IDE by hand. If you're relying on AI, you're going to end up relying too much on copying and pasting and won't get that muscle memory. However, when you want to do something brand new, starting from scratch, all you have is an idea, I think AI is a great way to do it. It's going to build on the world's existing knowledge, and if it's something simple, it should give you something that works out of the box. And quick preview, I can tell you that it will work out of the box. That's what I've already practiced so far. So before we go to the AI, let me just go to the terminal. I've created here a directory called tester, and it's currently blank. So let's create a virtual environment. So on my Linux system, my Python is called Python 3, and we're going to use venv to create a directory called .venv, which is a virtual environment. So let's see, there it is. Now let's activate this. So within there should be a bin and then an activate, and there you can see in the prompt there is a venv. That means that it's currently active. Great. And I've got VS Code open here, so let's click the icon to create a new file, and we're also going to call that tester.py. Simple stuff, single file. Okay, so let's go to the AI, and I'm using po.com, which is a really cool AI tool. I'll just show you here. It's got access to a lot of the different AIs. So GPT-4o is the one I decided to use today. I've not used this before, but it also has Gemini, Llama, Claude 3. It's, the stable diffusion and stuff like that. If you like images, Mistral. It's got so many. GPT-3.5, which is typically what I use, but in this case today I wanted to use GPT-4o. So I already have a saved session here, so let's have a look at this. So let me go right to the top because it brought us to the end, and we will get there. So I said to it literally, I want to test a public API using Python. Now sometimes I will be a lot more, in fact often I will be a lot more specific about what I want. But in this case, I wanted to give it just a few core details. I want to test an API, a public one, and I want to use Python. Let's see what it comes up with, okay? And it actually came up with what I wanted it to come up with, which was using requests and also the testing framework of pytest. So it says here, it's straightforward using libraries like requests. So first install libraries, and you can install it using pip. And yeah, this command, I have double checked this on the PyPy website. It does happen to be correct. That will install the latest version of request. So let's go ahead and do that now. Now of course it would be better to create a requirements file with the library in there, in this case requests, and to pin a version number, which you should look up. In this case, we're not pinning a version, we're just using the latest version. That's not best practice, but we're just starting out. We don't even know if this is going to work, so this is fine for now. And I've run that command and everything looks successful. Great. So let's go back to here. And we've done that, and let's use, it says choose a public API. For example, let's use this API, which is called the JSON placeholder API, which is a free fake online REST API for testing and prototyping. Right, indeed. Now I have heard of this. I was originally going to use a different free API that I know, but I have heard of this. Let's have a quick look at this, okay? I've actually opened this up already. Free, fake, and reliable API for testing and prototyping, 3 billion requests. It's even sponsored. That's how popular it is. Let's page down, and it says here is an example. You can run this code. So run the script. I don't know what language this is, but if you do that, it returns that, and you can see that there's an ID which is fairly common, which is unique for every record. It's given an ID which will tend to increment from 1 through infinity, whatever the capacity of the database is, and this is the ID of the record as well. In this case, a user ID, but it could be anything, title, etc., etc. So it gives an example here. These are common resources, so /post, /comments, albums, photos, to-dos, users. So it has a few examples, and in this case, it says here that all HTTP methods are supported. You can use HTTP or secure HTTP. And get would be equivalent to what you would do in your browser, and you can also post, you can put, patch, delete. If you're not sure what the difference between all these are, I recommend having a look at, just Google for HTTP methods and see what it comes up with. But we're going to keep things simple. We're just going to do a get and a post in our case, and even I can click on this, any of these hyperlink URLs to see an example. So for posts, it will return here. The user ID is the same for all these records, but you can see that each record is incremented ID 1, 2, 3, and you can see a title and a body. If I were to click on post 1, it's showing me the specifics only for that particular post. In this case, the post with an ID of 1. And it's a bit like a blog, so there's even comments on the posts, I guess. Although, yeah. So you can see the post ID of 1 in each case, but there's a different user ID. ID 1, 2, 3, and these are different users. This is Elise, Nikita, Lou, and they're posting different comments. So this is kind of like a blog. But we're going to keep things really simple. We're just going to do a get on posts and a post on posts. So let's go back to the AI, and it's saying here's a simple script. Let's run through this before we do it. Okay, so let's get this all in view. We're going to import requests, which is the library that we need to make a request to a REST API, and we'll define as a variable the URL, which is this. We'll then send a GET request to the API. So using the request library and the GET method within that, on that URL, we'll store that in a new variable called response. And from there, this new variable will have various attributes. So response.status code, if that is equal to 200, print success. Let me divert temporarily. I just Google for HTTP response status codes, and if you don't know in general, this is how they are composed. 100 series are informational, but usually if you like going to a website, for example, you will get a 200 series response. Sometimes you may get a 300 if you're getting a redirection, and any kind of errors will tend to be one of two kinds. It'll either be 400 series or 500 series, and the first is client errors and the second is server. So 400 for client and 500 series for server. So if we go back here, indeed, if the response is a 200, then that is a success. Let's look it up specifically. So if I go on 200 here, and you can see here, oops, that's 200. A 200 means okay, the request succeeded, and if it's a GET, which is what we're doing, then it was fetched, the resource was fetched and it was transmitted in the message body. Great. So print success, and the response, the JSON attribute stored as something called variable called data, print that out, print out the first index 0. That is just the way it is. And if we don't get a 200, if we get something else, and we print a failure message and also print whatever the status code is. And the second test is to send a post request. So we're going to give it data. The first thing we do is create a variable with 3 key value entries, so title, body, and user ID. And what we're going to do here is, using the request library and the post method, the parameters are going to be the URL, which is the same, and also we're going to send this parameter JSON, which is our variable we just created with those 3 sets, 3 pairs of key values. So we're saying if the response code is a 201, now we know 200 series is a success, but let's have a quick look here. So, sorry, that's the wrong place. If we go here, then with 201 means that a request succeeded and a new resource was created, and as it says, typically the response after a post request, or indeed sometimes a put request. So we go back here, here, then if it's a 201, which is a success code for a creation, print post created successfully. That's exactly what we want. And also print that response. So we expect it should be the same as what we sent it. It should be a confirmation. And if it's not a successful creation, we want it to print failure to create, and also whatever the success is. So here's an explanation, and that's just a summary of what we said. Send a GET, check for 200, okay. If successful, print the data. Send a post. If it's a 201 created, then print that out to confirm it back to us. And it's just saying here how to print it. Now here is an example of some additional things you can do. Error handling, which is generally good in all scripts, and it's just checking checking that your input parameters are good. So for example, that data that we created there with the key value pairs, if we miss something like a quotation mark, we'll handle that before it even gets sent to the API. You handle that with your own error handling. It's always best practice. For now we don't care. Logging, for now we don't care. Environment variables, in general, it's DevOps best practice to never put API keys or any passwords or credentials in the code. You should always inject them with environment variables. As we already said earlier, we're not concerned with that. We actually don't want that complication right now, but for future use, we should use that. Great suggestion by the AI, and it also makes a suggestion to use a testing framework such as unit test or pytest. Now I happen to know, remember, I knew pytest, and I know that this is also very common as well, and indeed it's more you can test more robust scenarios if you're using a testing framework. Now, quick preview, we're going to do that shortly, but for now, let's not bother with that. So it gives an example using unit test. However, let's just test this out first. So I'm going to copy this code, put this in here, let's paste this. We don't really need to reread this before running it because we already ran through it. So let's just save this. Let's go to the terminal. I'm going to run this. In my Linux system I have to type Python 3, but on your system you might just only have to type Python. And I'm going to say Python 3 tested.py. So let's clear the screen as well and press enter. And you can see it's done two things. So the first one, it's done the GET request, success, and it has returned the body there. Great, that's what we wanted. And it also returned, it printed a line, success, it returned that. Now for the second one, it printed a line, it says, echo to the screen, post created successfully, fantastic. And it returned to us the post that we sent. This is not the variable, it's not printing the variable that we created, but it's printing actually the variable was sent to the API and a response which is identical was sent back, and that's what it says here. So that's great. That's exactly what we wanted. Perfect. So let's go back, and what I've done next is I said, great, the code works. Please extend the code so that it uses pytest to perform 3 simple tests. So I was quite clear here. I said this is always a great idea because the AI is never 100% sure that the code it gave you, it actually works. It's always good to tell it. And I said, please extend the code, because at the time I didn't really want to lose the code we already had. So ideally extend it. Don't just completely rewrite it. And we want to use now pytest to perform 3 simple tests. So let's scroll down and see what it gave. So it said here, sure, let's extend the code to use pytest for 3 simple tests. Pytest is a powerful testing framework that simplifies writing and running tests. So first of all, if you don't have it installed already, let me just hide that a little bit, you can install it via pip. So let's copy this, right? Let's go to the terminal. Let's install this. Remember, we're in our virtual environment, so it's okay to do a whole load of pip installs. This is isolated, which is exactly the right way to do it. So it looks successful to me. Let's go back. We've done that. Let's scroll down. It says create the test script and include this code. So almost fits. I'm going to scroll down in a second, but the first thing is you can see it's got import requests. We've already pip installed that previously, and we expect this to be used anyway. So let's scroll down a little bit. Great, now the whole thing is there. Now I was expecting a import pytest statement, but I soon realized that that's not the way you use pytest. You don't necessarily, maybe it's not possible, I don't know, but at least for our purposes we don't need to refer to it in the code. It's actually used to run from the command line later. That will become clear shortly. So although I told it to extend our code, it has kind of rewritten it, but it is using what we already had and building on that. So the AI did obey my simple request that I made of it. So what it's doing is defining the API endpoint. That's the same. And it's now got 3 different functions. And what I can tell you up front is that these 3 functions are doing pretty similar things to what we had before. The first one is going to test the get that we did before. Okay? The second one is going to test create. Okay? And the third one is going to test the same thing, but it's going to be an invalid attempt to create via a post request. That will become clear because it's the most complicated one. So the first one, if you look here, it's kind of similar. What it does is it uses requests, it uses the get method on the URL we already defined, stores that in a variable called response. Now here's where it changes slightly. We have a whole bunch of assert commands, and this is what's being used with pytest. Now assert in the English language means to kind of say something should be this, or to postulate something. But in programming terms, what I've said is I did a test on search, and this is a great, from Wikipedia, a great definition. In computer software testing, a test assertion is an expression which some testable logic about a target under test. Okay? In fact, I like this one better here. It says, in essence, assertions are used to declare the expected behavior or the expected outcome of a test, and it will fail if that is not meant. So that is the best way to describe it. Expected behavior or expected outcome of a test. So let's go back here. So remember, a simple GET request we expect to be successful. We are asserting that we expect the status code of our variable to be 200, and the JSON property of our variable we're going to call data. I think we did that last time as well. And what we're going to assert is that, first of all, does this exist? Which we are expecting a list. Does it exist? Drilling further down, this kind of assumes it exists, but is it greater than 0? Is there something there? It's not blank. Drilling further down, is there an ID in there? A key called ID, and is there a key called title? Because this is what we're expecting. We could just test for one of these, but in this case it is a good idea to test for two. If you have an API and maybe it's returning, I don't know, 20 different keys, you don't necessarily need to test for them. It's a good idea to test for ID because this is a basic value. A unique ID should be in every single record, and you would expect a title as well, because you would also expect this in maybe every single one. But you might not necessarily, if you've got 20 different keys, you might not necessarily expect them all to be represented. So I like the way this test is being constructed. Just test for two basic keys that you would expect to be there. So that's the test for a GET. Now, for a successful post to create a record, again, the data is 3 pairs of key value statements. And again, what we're doing is we're using the request library, the post method, and the parameters of the URL, and also to set as data our post data variable. And what we're asserting is that on the response we want the status code parameter to be 201. So let's just show you here that 201 should be created, if you recall. So we want there to be in the response that we get back an ID and a title, a body, and a user ID, because this is what we sent: the title, the body, and the user ID. But in this case we're also asking for it to return back that ID. Now, didn't mention that before, but it's typical of an API when it inserts something into its database that it should create a unique ID. So we're asking for it to return this. It could be any number. We don't know what that's going to be. That's all controlled on the server side. But by testing for this, that tells us that we have successfully created a record on the other side. So again, it's drilling down. We're saying we want a 201, and we also want in the data that comes back an ID which tells us it's been registered, and we want to get these 3 things that we sent to it. Okay. In fact, we don't also want those 3 things. We want it to come back with the correct values. So the whole thing that we sent to it. So it's slightly different to up here. Up here we just said, well, make sure that there's an ID, make sure that there's a title. We're going further. We want to actually know what the values of those things are. Also here we were testing to see, is there data returned to us? We're not bothering to test for that now. We're expecting that. We actually want to, we're going further, and we're saying, look, give us the ID in that data, because that tells us that it's actually done some processing on the other side. Now finally, the third case is we want to test for an invalid post request. And in this case it's the same as before, but we're actually only going to put in this key value for title. We're going to not put in body and user ID. So it's as if we haven't put in our request full amount of what we should be doing. So pretty similar here. We're going to make the request, and here's just a note. It's saying that about this API, it actually allows partial data. So the great thing is this AI has contextual knowledge even about this particular API, probably based on what other people, how they've used it in the past. So it's saying that we actually expect a 201 status code. We expect it to get created even though it's missing body and user ID. But it's saying in a real API we would probably expect a 4XX status code. Remember, 4XX is a client error response. We would expect that because in most APIs would have some error handling to say, look, you're missing something. Okay? In this API it doesn't work that way. It's a bit more, let's say, a bit more friendly and not going to really, bust you to make a perfect request. But it's telling us that. So in this case, we're going to assert that in the case of an invalid post that's missing some fields, we're still expecting a 201, a success message. But bear in mind, on a real API, you might want to change this to something else, a 4 something something. So here we get the response, and what we're asserting is that there is the existence of an ID. So we did that last time as well, and in this case again we want the title to be foo because we sent it that. However, a little bit different for the other two fields. Now what it's saying here is that the body and user ID, they might be defaulted to something or they might be missing. So if they're missing, we want to assert that the body is simply just not in data, it's just not there. Or if it's defaulted, it'll probably be none or null value. It certainly won't be anything real. I think most likely it would be none. So assert that the body and the user ID are either not in data or they're simply none. So I hope you can see how this works. If we scroll down, again there's a summary. Just to reinforce it, the first one, send a GET request, assert that the response is 200, assert that the response data is a list with at least one item, and check that each post contains an ID and a title. And to create a post with our specific data, we want to get 201, and then we want to check we get the correct data. But for an invalid post, which is incomplete, intentionally missing 2 key value pairs, we want to assert that we still get a success message because that's what we expect, but we want to check, we want to assert that we should be getting either missing fields or some kind of default. So here's how to run the test with pytest. You simply type pytest test underscore or whatever your Python file is, and this is the kind of output you'll get. So let's do that. Right, let's copy this. I'm going to copy this. We're going to overwrite this. We know it is actually extending upon that, and let's save this. And I'm going to go to the terminal. Let's clear the screen. Python 3 tester.py, and I'm getting nothing. Did I not save this? Maybe. Let's see here. Okay, I don't know if you spotted what we didn't do correctly. There's definitely something that we're missing. I'm just going to double check here. I'm not sure that we installed pytest, did we? Oh, look at that. Is it actually? No. Okay, we did do that correctly, but it hasn't. It's run no tests in 0 seconds. Tester.py is there. You know why? Because look what we did. This is the problem. I just ran the script as a Python script, right? And what it did was it ran through all this, and it didn't do anything, because in this script I defined 3 different functions, and they're not actually run anywhere on separate lines, so nothing happened. The only thing that happened was Python saw these 3 functions were defined, and it also imported this, and it it assigned a variable called URL. So yeah, I got confused because they Python 3 pytest, kind of similar syntax. Let's clear the screen. Pytest and test it. Let's run this again, and it's doing something, and there we go. It collected 3 items, and it ran the 3 tests and completed them in 1.38 seconds. Obviously that's pretty negligible, but if you're running a lot of tests that take longer, this information does actually become quite important. You even might want to optimize your tests or reduce the time, but 3 tests in 1 second, there's not really much point in making any improvements on those, and you can see they were successful. If we had a number of tests and some weren't successful, we'd probably get a different outcome. I have a feeling it would probably show in red what would happen. So yeah, you can see that they were successful. Now I just want to show you here, I do have here I did ask here the AI to create me here. Oh, by the way, before we do that, some advice is asking, consider adding error handling and more detailed assertions. So we covered error handling, but yeah, we had 3 simple tests, but it's saying add more detailed. So this is a whole science in itself. And mocking as well, it's saying that you can use some suggested libraries like these 2 to mock API responses. So what this is, it's kind of like using a fake API that will mean you don't have to rely on an actual API. So if you're running 100 tests, it could be quicker and it could still meet your requirements if you use a fake API. And we've kind of done that in a way ourselves, but we've used a fake API, in this case JSON placeholder, in order to just test Python testing an API. So we knew that this free fake API, it was going to be free, it wasn't going to use a key, it was going to be fast, and it was not going to require a key to use it. So that's why a lot of people are using this. That's why there's 3 billion requests. So in a way we did something quite similar. So it suggests mocking. Now something else I asked it here was, how do I do a post request in curl to that URL and with that data? So I just want to see what is the response that we're going to get. Okay, so I'm going to do this in bash. Now I could have just gone here and maybe in our original code, not this code, but in our original code, if I go to the top, I could have added the deleted these 2 lines, but I just wanted to show you that there's an equivalent in bash and how it looks. So oops, it doesn't look like that. I need to recopy that. Let's copy that. Let's clear the screen. Let's paste that. This is what we're going to paste. And curl-x is to do an API request, in this case post, on that URL with this. So JSON content looking like that. I don't remember what D means, but you can kind of guess it's doing a post. So let's do paste, and there we go. It's just showing you the equivalent in bash. I just thought I'd show you that while I was here, and you can see it returns what we sent to it, which is these 3 rows, but it also returned an ID, as if to say this is the 101st record in our database that is being created. Now if I do that again, but I take out those 2nd and 3rd key value pairs, sorry, I'm just checking the syntax there, like that, and then press enter, then you see what we get back. So it comes back with foo and the ID, which was what we sent to it, foo. It came back with an ID, as if it had written it into a database. I know it's 101 again, but there isn't really records being maintained on the back. This is a fake API, don't forget. It's not going to completely mimic a real one. And if you look, it didn't come back with any body or user ID. So we didn't know when we ran pytest, we really didn't know what it was going to come back with. Was it going to come back with missing keys, or was it going to come back with some default response like none? And in our case, you can see, because we ran that curl statement, it came back with none. And because of that, it was included in our assertion that it might be none, it might be it might be not in data, i.e. it might be missing. Like here, it's missing, we only have that, we don't have body and user ID. Because of that, it still fulfilled our assertion, and therefore the test still passed. So I thought I would just add that quickly at the end to demonstrate the logic that's working there. So that's it. I hope you found this video useful. I hope I didn't talk for too long, but I wanted to give you a thorough walkthrough on testing an API in Python, the basics, and in the end we did it using well-known libraries, requests and pytest. We had a few different test cases, including failure cases, not only success, and we used the API to get there. So that's it. Hope you enjoyed this video. Please check out my other videos, and take care. Bye.